Good afternoon, Sonor family. This is Julian, and today we've got Mark Petrocelli, and he is the drum tech for Todd Sucherman with Styx. And today he's going to talk to us about Todd's new rig, and got a lot going on. Welcome.
Julian, how are you, man? Nice to meet you here.
I'm very good. Very, very nice to meet you as well. You know what? Let's just roll her back to the beginning. So you've been playing drums, going on half a century. Uh, Tell us about your start with that.
Boy, so I guess when I was a kid, my parents loved 50s music, and Elvis in particular was played in my household. And I just remember being so captivated by Elvis music, and in particular, a drummer, which I didn't even know his name at the time, DJ Fontana. In particular, the songs Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. Those made me interested in the drums, but it was really Elvis that made me first start thinking about the entertainment business. And then in fourth grade, a guy who was older that was in my class, he was held back one day for show and tell. He brought a Kiss Alive record in, and seeing the visual of the vinyl jacket and then hearing the music, that just changed my life and set a new course of direction for me. And that's when I wanted to be a drummer and a rock star. And I never looked back. So there was always this train of thought of drums in my life. I took lessons at a very early age. And then at some point, my dad and my mom got me my first drum set. And things, as you know, as I got older, things progressed. I would play in local bands, had some regional success with some bands. And then at some point, I guess 92, a guitar player friend of mine, Bill Staley, asked me if I wanted to move to Texas and start a band. And here I am. It's like most bands do, they break up at some point. And I found myself married by this point to the girl of my dreams and had a new baby boy. And the singer and bass player for the last band that I was in wanted to go to LA and try and do it, make it one more time. So my wife said, I don't want to sit across the table from you when you're 80 years old and hearing you complain about how you should have went and did this or did that. She gave me her blessing. I went out to LA, tried to do some things and just failed miserably once again. And she said, there's a guitar center opening up close to the house when you come back. Why don't you apply there? Maybe you can get a job and start working at Guitar Center. And that was another directional change in my life where I went from the dream of being a player to now a dream of making a career in the music instrument business. And it's really because of that path where I had the opportunity to meet Todd. And here we are.
Isn't it funny how little incidents in life just change the whole trajectory of everything?
Oh yeah,
So how did you meet Todd?
100%. So I want to say it was the year 2000. I was laying on the couch. My wife was in the kitchen doing something, and I was flipping on the channels, and PBS happened to be playing a rerun of the Styx reunion that they had done with Dennis. And I just, I loved Styx music. There were certain songs in my younger life that resonated with me. So I stopped and I just found myself looking at this drummer going, oh my God, who is this guy? And wow, he's really good. So the next day I went into Guitar Center and we had inter-store email, and I got on the email. Hey, does anybody know who this drummer is for Styx? And this girl, Carmen, who worked at the Guitar Center out of Chicago, she chimed in. She goes, I actually work for JY, and that's Todd Sucherman. Oh, cool. Do you know what kind of gear he plays? Well, he plays Sabian cymbals. Styx was coming to Houston, where I live now. So I got on the horn with a friend of mine, Ann McNally from Sabian, and I really got to see this guy, Todd Sucherman. Do you think you can, hook me up with some tickets? And then she sure enough did. We went to the show. And at the time, I was doing some things with Jerry Gaskill from King's X, studio tunings to be specific for some of the records. And so Ann got me 4 tickets. I took Jerry, my wife, and my wife's cousin, and we were sitting there having some adult beverages, watching the show. And Jerry was just so excited, as was I. And Jerry kept turning to me saying, "Man, these guys are rock stars. They are so awesome. I used to think they sucked. They're rock stars." And I'm like, just we were having a great time. And then it comes time to go backstage to meet Todd for the first time. And we probably had a few more adult beverages. And by the time we get in there and meet Todd, who was gracious from the get go, Jerry started saying that again. "I used to think you guys sucked, but you're rock stars. The show was amazing." And Todd's looking at me like, "I don't know you, and I certainly don't know who this guy is." So I could see it was getting weird for him. And I said, "Oh, hey, Todd, this is Jerry Gaskell from King's X." And Todd all of a sudden, "Oh, hey, man, nice to meet you." And everything just kind of leveled out. And it started a new friendship with Todd and Jerry as well. So, and we recently had an opportunity to sit down with Jerry and his wife in New Jersey and have a wonderful dinner. In '94, when I started working at Guitar Center, that was the retail side of the music instrument business. And in 2003, I started working for ProMark Drumsticks doing sales. And when I started working there, I had mentioned to Todd, "Hey," and he and I had kept in contact throughout those years. But I had mentioned to him that, "Hey, I'm working at ProMark now, and I don't do artist relations, but if you're ever unhappy with your current situation, you know a guy."
Mm-hmm.
And that guy made a connection with our artist relations director at the time, Kevin Radomski, and an instant bond was formed there as well. And that's when Todd came to play ProMark, and that's when our friendship really started to blossom at that point. What I do now is I work for a company called RBI Music, and then RBI Music is the parent company for some instrument brands as well as a distributor for brands. So for RBI, I do artist relations for Toka Percussion, Grover Pro Percussion, Boomwhackers, and key account sales to places like Guitar Center and Sweetwater. So it's cool. And thank you to the owners and my boss at RBI for allowing me to work both sides of the musical fence, so to say. It's been a pretty cool ride.
Was it ever an aspiration of yours to become a touring drum tech, or how did this all come about with Styx?
So I don't know that I had that dream, um, but you saying that has me thinking about my father right now and my first drum set that he took me to go get out of the green sheet. And not knowing anything, I was probably 10 years old, and I I took it apart, not knowing what I was doing, taking the heads off, and didn't know how to put it back together. So my dad uh, helped me figure it out, and we were able to put it back together. And maybe that was the first moment that doing that sort of thing was
Mm-hmm.
an interest. In 2016, I got a phone call from a dear friend of mine, Randy Mueller, who was the tour manager for Foghat at the time, who used to be a sound man for one of my bands back in the 80s in Pittsburgh. And he said, "Hey, I need a drum tech for Roger Earl. Are you interested in doing this?" And I said, "Absolutely." I checked with my wife, and she said, "Absolutely, go do it. And let's see where it goes." So I was with Roger almost 6 years, and that was a fantastic experience as well. And as part of his organization, we did a show in Mexico. Well, I met a guy by the name of Brian Wong, who's Styx's production manager, and he and I hit it off. And at some point, he called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in moving to a different band?" And I said, "Yeah." And the plan was going to be that I was going to go to Foreigner, and a guy by the name of Paul Bassett, rock star drum tech, awesome guy, was going to go work for Styx. And if for some reason that didn't happen, then Brian said, "Well, then you'll just come with us." And that's what happened. And it ended up being a perfect fit. I had already known Todd. I knew a couple of the guys, one being Scott Rotler, who's Tommy Shaw's guitar tech. He and I have done shows together with the Guess Who when I was with Foghat. And I know he certainly put in a good word for me. So thank you, Scott. And thank you, Randy. But I've only worked for two bands. I've done some one offs with some other bands and some studio tune ups, like I had mentioned before with King's X.
So tell us what kind of emotions hit when the train changes tracks and you're no longer going to be Foreigner's drum tech, but you're going to go work with Styx and you already have strong connections with Todd. How did you feel about that?
I felt relieved, frankly, because just coming into a camp where Todd and I were already friends was a no-brainer for me, and that's what I had hoped for to begin with. So when it came to fruition, I was like, yes.
Hmm.
um, and there was some reservation, frankly, on Todd's part. Now I'm going to be wearing a different hat with him where I'm working for him, and he was concerned that he didn't want that role of the working relationship getting in the way of our friendship. So there was some trepidation, but I assured him, like, I've known you a long time, I love you, and I'm going to take better care of you than anybody else. And all of this, of course, under unfortunate circumstances with the passing of the late
Right.
great Polly Carrizzo. But you know, I set his mind at ease, and here we are. In fact, April 8th will be 3 years since my first show with them.
What are some things that happen during a tour that cause stress or that could potentially aggravate a situation between a tech and the drummer?
There have been, I would say, I guess, three instances where some things have happened, one of which most famously has been captured on Todd's video of me swapping out his snare drum. That was certainly a clincher, so to say. Um, Luckily, prior to that, Todd had a conversation with me. Look, nobody wants to be out there, but if something happens, I can't have you out there, being nervous about a situation. Just get the job done,
Mhm.
and let's move on quickly. And what will seem like an eternity really is a blink of an eye. So after that conversation, I was able to really relax and just settle in. And thank God, because when that situation happened, I did the job and it was flawless. So,
Mhm.
the other things that have happened recently on the Rock Legends cruise, he's using some signature hi hat clutches, which he had gold plated. And his main hi hat during Mr. Roboto kind of crapped out on him. And come to find out, when I opened it up, the bottom portion of the clutch, the threaded portion, had snapped. So that was exciting, changing out a hi hat clutch mid show, changing out cymbals. That those are some of the things that happen. But it's really about getting the kit set to where when he sits down, it's comfortable as it can be.
I know you don't very often blow out the bottom head on a snare drum in the middle of a song, but it leads me to ask you, how many backup snare drums do you have?
One backup.
One backup. So,
Yes.
in a situation like that where you're already running on the backup, are you in a quick hurry to get that bottom head changed or?
No, so interestingly enough, it was actually the strap that holds the snare wires split.
Ah.
It blew off. So it wasn't the head, but yeah, initially I changed it when I take that main snare drum back and replaced it with the spare. I'm already working on the main snare because if it happens again, which I know some techs that has happened to, you got to be ready.
Well, I know that when I'm out on the road and I have to use my spare tire and I no longer have a spare tire, it's kind of a nerve-wracking situation. So I'm sure it has to be somewhat similar.
Yeah, 100%.
And so how many backups hi-hat clutches would you have, typically?
With the signature clutches that he's using, there are two on the kit. I have a backup, and then I have two current sonar clutches that I have as backups as well.
And then cymbals. You mentioned cymbals. So would you have a crack in a cymbal? Would that be why you're changing a cymbal out?
Yeah, it's amazing. Todd is so laser focused on everything with his gear as well as the performance. It is amazing. Like he could say to our monitor engineer, Evan, hey, bring this particular instrument up a dB or 2 dB. And I'm like, how do you know that? And
Hmm.
sure enough, he does. So when he's playing at times, he'll crack a cymbal and I'll be listening and I don't hear it, but he hears it. And I'm sure there's a bit of a feel difference when you're playing a cracked cymbal. In fact, I know there is. Um, but I don't ever hear it break or anything like he does. So it's just a matter of swapping it out in between songs and behind the stage. I have a stash of backup cymbals for every cymbal he has.
So how often do you have a situation where you're having to change out a symbol? Is that common or rare or what?
My first year, which was 2022, again coming in April, and we that was the first big summer tour I did with REO Speedwagon and Loverboy, and it seemed like he had cracked a few that year, and then the following year, not as many, and really it's been pretty good. He recently cracked one on the Rock Legends cruise. He had cracked his 20-inch crash, which flies above his right kick drum and right by his sessions ride.
Hmm.
Um, but he didn't notice that one that night, so I don't know. I changed that out the following morning.
What happens with the old ones? Do they go back to Sabian?
Yeah, we send them back to Sabian. Then just it's a rotating stock that we get. Trade some broken ones in, get some new ones.
Tell us about the transition to Sonor drums after working for nearly 3 years with a different brand.
The brand has been awesome, and happy birthday, Sonar. What an accomplishment there for sure.
Hmm.
And certainly a great time to have Todd come back home. The brand has been awesome. Jerry Goldenson, who is a longtime friend of mine, former Pittsburgher as well. We used to play the same circuit when we were young with our various bands. Jeff Mulvihill, Henry Go, all the team in Germany have been really awesome. Leading up to Todd, uh, showing his kit for the first time, it was almost a year time frame from the point of inception to where we are.
Yeah.
The drums are fantastic. They sound like cannons. They show you their voice right away when you tune them. They tune so easily. We all have our certain way of tuning things. I typically start with the floor toms and work my way up versus the saying, hey, it's easier to walk down the steps and start from the high to go down. Well, I'm the complete opposite. The hardest, or I should say, the most time consuming part of tuning the kit is actually the physical act of taking the head off and putting the new one on and stretching it. But again, once I do that, boy, it is such a dream to tune. They just really come in so easily.
So were you part of the decision-making process? Did Todd get your input at all when making the decision to change companies?
I had nothing to do with that. That is his baby.
Hmm.
You know, certainly he has a nostalgic heart and mind, much like myself, and just wanted to go back home to where things kind of started for him, his first love.
Hmm.
And it's funny being an artist relations manager for some drum companies. I see comments on different forums like, "Oh, Sonor must be paying him a lot of money." Guess what, people? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. The only money that would ever exchange hands is if you have a signature product and you get a percentage
Hmm.
of royalty because your name is on it. And it benefits you and it benefits the company. That's the only time any drummer would get paid for anything. And again, that percentage, it ain't what you think it is. It's a small percentage. I had no involvement in Todd's decision making, but certainly was heavily involved in the tour kit, specifically on ordering things, hardware, boom arms, parts, extra parts that I would need. Um, things of that nature. So that was really my involvement. And initially, Todd wanted the drum kit to be traditional, have traditional Sonor tension rods, the slotted tension rods. And I was like, please, please don't do that to me. The time is precious. So having to change heads on all those drums using a slotted bit, like a flathead screwdriver, would have still been very cumbersome. So I had made a video with Lawrence's keyboard tech, um, and Jeff was filming me, showing him what I do with a normal drum key and how difficult it could be at times. And after that video, Todd said, "Okay, I get it. We're going to go with normal tension rods." And he ended up doing that with his house kit as well.
And you bring up another question I had about speed. You're not looking at a four-piece jazz rig. You're looking at a huge drum set. How long does it take you to set that up?
When I first started, I would time myself just to see how fast it would take or how fast I could do it. And I could get his kit up in 50 minutes. Now, again, everything is memory locked, the
Hmm.
carpet is marked. Uh, so it's just taking the puzzle pieces and assembling them. There's a lot of puzzle pieces.
Hmm.
But it would go up in, fairly quickly. And then at some point I realized I don't have to really rush. I can take my time, and I'm very meticulous about touching every wing nut and going through and tightening things. I don't ever want anything to come down on him in the middle of a show, and nor does he. So I really started taking my time a little bit more. There are other things that I have to do that are part of the drum footprint that I have to take care of, like hooking up cables and his fans and things of that nature. So at this point, I don't really think about how long it takes me to get it up.
So what's your teardown time? Now that you probably are a little bit more interested to get that thing packed up and get done and get it on the truck and get to the room or the bus or whatever, right?
Yeah, teardown time. I certainly have the most bits and pieces of teardown time, and I can have that down in 30 minutes, sometimes 40, depending on the local help that I have. When that tour that we did with REO Speedwagon and Loverboy, um, both John Aldridge and Jay, who was Matt Frenette's drum tech, would help me tear down. That we would help each other, and I think we had his old kit torn down within 20 minutes, which was amazing. But to load the entire Styx trailer and close the door is on average is about an hour.
So, do you ever have issues where you almost leave something or realize you forgot to pack something, or is it more systematic than that and you don't even have to think about it?
Um, there have been two circumstances. The parachute that we cover the drum kit with, so the audience doesn't see the next band.
Mm.
While the opening band is playing, they don't see Todd's kit. I had left that parachute behind somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it was probably a good thing because it was old. I don't even know how old it was, but it was torn. It was kind of pieced back together with some gaff tape. So we got a new parachute this year, or actually, I'm sorry, last year, and I was carrying Todd's spare backup snare drum on the bus for some reason. I don't remember what the deal was, and I had left it in the back of the bus. Don't tell Todd. And luckily, our guitar tech Scott Rotler said, "Hey, do you need this?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. Thank you."
Yeah,
But those are the only two instances. Well, Todd might tell you a third. When we went to go to KHS to build the new Sonor kit, I had left my parts bag that I wanted to bring with me to KHS at the Styx warehouse. So
mm.
I guess three times.
Did that give you any problems not having that while y'all were building the new kit?
No, not at all. It was again, I'm very meticulous, and like my brain was just frying out a little bit from doing something stupid like that.
So when you were working on the new kit at KHS, I have a few questions about that. First of all, was that exciting for you?
Let me back up a little bit before I get to that. When I was a kid, I was a teenager, driving home with my mom or something, and I had noticed somebody throwing away some drums. And I thought, who would do such a thing? And so I walked back to the place where I saw them and I lugged three drums back to my house. And it was not a close walk, but I still did it. One of which was an old 60s red sparkle teardrop Sonor piccolo snare drum,
Wow.
which I wish I still had. So that was really my first time ever handling and hearing anything Sonor. And then the next time would be at Todd's house in 2007 when PASIC was being held in Austin. We went to Todd's house and I got to play one of his kits. Found myself with Kevin, our then artist relations manager at Promark, and Todd on three different kits, just having fun. But playing that Sonor kit, I was like, oh my God, this is the best sounding drum set I've ever heard in my life.
Hmm.
And was floored. And I would frankly drop that in his ear on occasion, like, boy, those were special. And so fast forward to KHS actually being involved with the build with Todd and Jerry and Jeff and Henry. It was awesome. It was like going, going to Candyland for sure.
Hmm.
Hearing the drums the first time and just being part of that whole experience was really special.
So has that influenced you to want to get some Sonors for yourself, or are you still playing something else, or what?
Uh, that will be a loaded question because when my wife watches this, she'll be saying, "You're not getting any more drums." But I happen to have this guy, which I don't know if you can see that
That is beautiful.
beautiful little girl right there.
Hmm.
Todd is frankly one of the most generous, thoughtful, eloquent human beings that I have ever met and have the pleasure of knowing.
Hmm.
And while we were at KHS, he gifted that to me for Christmas, and it was pretty awesome. So I have that and another Sonar snare drum. No Sonar kit as of yet, to be determined.
And that was beautiful. That was a classy looking drum there.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Todd. And both Todd and I were incorrect in the number of plies that we said his kit is. I think I may have said eight, he may have said nine, or vice versa. His kit is actually 12 ply shell, 10 of which are the German heavy beech, and those are sandwiched on the interior and exterior with the African marble wood. So a total of 12 plies for an 8 millimeter shell. And then certainly outfitted with 24 karat gold fittings, lugs, all the bells and whistles. Todd and I will find ourselves standing in front of the set, just oogling and guying over how beautiful it is. The high gloss outer exterior is just awesome looking, and the interior is the semi gloss.
Hmm.
So it's really, to me, more than just a drum set. It's a piece of art. When he stepped out of his comfort zone a little bit by not doing the burst, by doing clear front heads, he changed up his hi-hat stand after decades
Yeah.
of using the old signature hi-hat stand. So there's a lot of firsts for him on this. I'm proud of him.
So one question I have for you about the current touring rig, and actually it's about the Sonor drum build in general. Um, as somebody who hasn't necessarily been a Sonor guy in the past, I know you had the older stuff you picked up and all that. Um, but do you feel like the undersized shell plays that big of a difference in the feel and the sound of that drum shell?
um, I do, and I will say I have experience with the undersized shell because I own a Premier set. Premier England, when they were still there, made undersized shells as well. So to me, it's I don't know why everybody else doesn't do it, because you're getting true contact with the flat portion of the head and the bearing edge. So it really dances on that edge and gets you some great sounds. Um, I would say the biggest thing that I have to watch, and anybody has to watch, is just making sure when you put that head on that you have the even gap all the way around the shell, just to make sure it seats properly.
Yeah. So have you ever gone on the configurator and just played around with the different drum set options and all that?
I was on it today.
Were you?
I
So
was.
what would you do different than what he did? If you were going to build one for yourself, what would your specs look like?
Uh, I don't know. And if we were talking younger me, it would be more of a Bonham kit. But I have to say, working with Todd, having the palette of sizes to choose from and get different sounds from is pretty nice. Where Todd likes clear ambassadors, I do prefer clear emperors on my kit. On the batter side, I like more of a thuddier tone to
Mhm.
them. I like die-cast hoops. I used to own a Tama Art Star 2, which had die-cast hoops on that, and I like the attack of the die-cast hoop. Um, but size-wise, 22 certainly on a kick drum for me. Todd uses two 22 by 16s. I tend to like deeper snares. I like a 7 by 14 is kind of my go-to size that I like. Todd uses 5.5 by 14s on this particular kit.
Mhm.
Again, having a main snare and a backup snare. And then he has 6 through 20 on his toms, 20 being the gong bass drum. In my previous younger days, spelled DAZE in the 80s, I was rocking a 22 kick with a 13 rack and a 16 and an 18. I don't think I would do that now, but I do like a 16 and 18 floor tom. I'd probably go with a 10 and a 12 and maybe two kick drums. Last year, my position of where I watched Todd, I would sit directly behind him, and I was hidden with a curtain. Now we're changing the setup, and I'm going to be watching him side stage. And there's pros and cons to that for sure, which we won't go into. But the one of the pros is I actually get to see his face now.
Mhm.
And there have been times where he's playing, and when he smacks the floor toms and the gong drum, boy, they sound so good. They just punch you in the face, boy, and they get out of your way. And I would find myself just laughing out loud how good they sound. And one of the shows before the cruise, same thing. He hit those floor toms and just looked over and gave me the stanky face, like, "Oh my God, these things are amazing."
Mhm.
And they are. He is like a little kid playing these drums. They sound awesome, and it inspires him every step of the way.
So tuning wise, do you tune by ear or do you have set tunings and use a tune bot or how do you do your tuning on that rig?
Again, going back to, it's easier to walk down the steps versus walking up.
Mhm.
Well, I consider the 18-inch floor tom the bottom step. So I'm walking up from there. And uh, once you define the lowest pitch that you can get out of that drum, then it's all relative from that point and going up. So
Mhm.
you can match everything from there. So I'll typically tension the top batter side as low as I can get it without it being flappy. And the bottom resonance side, I'll usually do a half step, sometimes a whole step higher. And from there, just working my way to the next drum. And I had seen a video one time, uh, somebody playing songs on the drums, like how you can play different songs. It might have even been Chad Smith in his uh, instructional video. In fact, I'm sure that's what it is. When I worked at Guitar Center, we would play that, and hearing him say, "Oh, well, if you have four drums, you can do the dun, 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 dun,
Mhm.
going to the races." So, and if you have three drums, you can do the old song, do 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 da da da, in the mood. Um, and now I've been doing the Jeopardy weight the song that they play when they're waiting for an answer. Dun, 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 dun. So I
Yeah.
just play those melodies, and that's how I do it. And there's nothing magical or mysterious about it whatsoever. It's a feel thing. It's a sight thing because you're always wanting to make sure you got the wrinkles out. So that's where your eyes come in. On his old kit, we would use thread locker to keep the tension rods from backing out. And with by doing that, it's hard to tell where ground zero is on some of those tension rods because you feel like you're there, but then when you look at it, you might have a gap and that washer's still spinning. So sight, sound, and feel
Hmm.
certainly come into play when you're tuning the kit. And I just move to each drum, moving up the steps until I get to the six.
How much time do you getting out of a set of ambassadors? Is that every show you have to change those out?
So ambassador coated on the snare drum will get changed every show. Uh, on this past cruise, he might have actually got 3 shows out of that head just because of the time constraints.
Hmm.
It's almost like a festival style situation. And then on the batter side, ambassador clears, those will go 3 shows, sometimes 4, just depending on how our schedule is and time constraints. The bottom resonant side is also ambassador clear. Those will get changed out twice a year. Bottom snare side is just an ambassador hazy, all Remo, by the way.
Hmm.
And that I'll change every 2 months or so. And kick drum batters, those will get changed twice a year. Those are Remo Power Stroke threes. The Styx crew and the band in general, and Foghat, same thing, band and crew. It's very family oriented vibe, and everybody is just so nice and so good at what they do. And I feel very blessed and fortunate to be with them and doing what I'm doing and still making the little boy, 10-year-old boy happy and playing with drums. So it's awesome. I think it was the end of 2023. Todd was looking at all his social media analytics, and he sent me a text saying, "Congratulations, you're number one." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, the video of you swapping out the snare, out of all the videos that I produce and put out there, educational and playing, uh, your video was number one this year. Congratulations. Julian, this has been fantastic. It's been so great meeting you on this platform. I love that we share the same barber. That you know, cool guy that you got there.
Hmm.
But I would say in closing, thank you to all the companies that Todd endorses. Without them, the wheels on our trucks and buses won't move because there won't be show without the great gear that he plays. Thank you to the entire Styx organization for letting me be part of the family. Thank you to the company that I work for, RBI Music, for allowing me to do this. Uh, my crew brothers and sister that I work with, they are awesome. I should say sisters. We have a new tour manager, Tracy Wiedemann, who's awesome. And lastly, my family for letting me do what I love. Todd is probably one of the greatest drum ambassadors to our community that we have ever seen. And he truly loves teaching and getting people inspired. And again, going back to Sonor, it's an inspiration for him. So he is also inspired. And that love just keeps emulating and trickling down. So it's cool to see him back where he belongs and loves. And it's great seeing him inspiring people as a result of that.